So the Big Ten is looking to expand again. There's some breaking news going on about conference realignment. We've already saw Texas and Oklahoma go to the SEC. We're seeing that USC and UCLA are going to the Big Ten in 2024. So apparently there's no better time to join a conference. And the Big Ten is about to sign a massive TV deal that in all likelihood is going to make the Big Ten teams slightly more money than the SEC teams. And they're the first and only national conference. And apparently there's some buzz going around that the Big Ten conference and several schools are talking about joining forces. And we will break down these schools that are in talks with the Big Ten conference and what it will look like if they join the conference. So the first team that they're talking about is Notre Dame. Notre Dame is apparently closer than ever before in talks with joining the Big Ten, and this shouldn't be a shock because while they'll likely get an easier schedule in the Big Ten, they'll keep their rivalry games, and they'll still be a national brand. And I don't mean they'll have an easier schedule as in the Big Ten's easier than what they do now, because that's not the case. It's just not. However, they're not going to make them play Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan and Michigan State all at the same time every year. Not at the same time, but in the same year. They're probably not going to throw them in that schedule. And by the way, Big Ten, you have to get rid of divisions sooner than later because it is ridiculous. You don't have in the SEC where Georgia and Alabama have to play every single year. But in the Big Ten, you have your top schools, your top 4 schools all have to play each other. So that'd be like the SEC having Georgia and Bama play every year. That hurts Georgia and Bama. But the Big Ten does that with their guys. They make Ohio State play Penn State, Michigan. I mean, you know, you got the West over there with Wisconsin and Iowa. Yeah, they're good schools. They produce tons of NFL talent. They're great with offensive line, running backs. They're big running schools. But at the same point in time, nobody who's an Ohio State fan or a Penn State fan would say, well, I'd rather play Penn State or Ohio State than Wisconsin. Absolutely not. As much as those schools are scary and Purdue is terrifying when you're ranked, no question about it, you don't want to play all those tough schools compared to, hey, let's go in the East and we got to play, or the West, and we got to play Wisconsin and Iowa. Sorry, they're just not at the same level as the guys in the East. So you got to get rid of divisions, I mean, sooner than later, because it's just, you're killing your schools, your biggest schools. And the SEC is smart with how they're doing it, and the Big Ten is just simply not. But anyways, they'd probably throw Rutgers, Maryland, Northwestern, Minnesota, you know, schools like that at them. And, you know, maybe Washington, something like that. If Washington joins, then they'd give them some rivalry. You know, they'd make it a little bit easier for them, and it'd be smart. Another thing, too, is that Notre Dame would not have to worry about losing their head coach to another school because they'd make enough money to be competitive with any schools, including Ohio State, who's the most popular school, popular brand in all of college football. They get the most views out of any school, including Alabama and Michigan. Michigan's in the top 3. In some, you can find where Michigan has more watched games than freaking Alabama does, even when they're not ranked. I mean, it's crazy. So, you know, the recruiting options and potential pipelines also increase for them as well, because you already have the California market that goes straight to the SEC and Big Ten. And then you have the Florida market that does the exact same, SEC and Big Ten. I mean, you're going to get a bigger piece of that pie. They'll also get more respect with their strength of schedule and even have better preseason rankings. More than likely, Notre Dame will also get a lot more viewers through the Big Ten Conference, putting a larger spotlight on them and their players. Notre Dame's already in the top 10 of most valuable teams, you know, and this would just increase that, make it even higher. They just have a massive advantage for joining the Big Ten. So Notre Dame's not the only team that we're going to be talking about today, because there's other teams that are looking to join the Big Ten. But, you know, how would the Notre Dame Fighting Irish be able to join the Big Ten Conference? You know, some people say that they're contractually obligated to join the ACC, and that's just not the case. The ACC only owns the rights to their other sports, not their football team. Okay, so that's a big thing right there, because the ACC signed the dumbest deal in the history of man. They just can't compete. They couldn't compete with the Big Ten and the SEC without them even, you know, adding more teams to their conference. And now with them adding more teams to their conference, and the Big Ten's looking to even expand further upward to maybe 24 teams in the next 5 years, you don't stand a chance. I mean, you just don't. The amount of money that they're going to make is just insane. So what could happen is Notre Dame could say, well, you can have all of our other sports, and we will just take our football team and go to the Big Ten. They have complete legal right to do so. There's nothing telling them, well, if you join a conference, it has to be the ACC. No, there's find it in writing, because you won't. You're not going to find Notre Dame signing that deal. It's not going to happen. So what they have their TV deal with is NBC. So and it ends in 2025. And they could end up just saying, hey, we'll join in 2024 and pay off the remaining year of our TV deal. And it wouldn't, I mean, it's literally pennies at this moment in time compared to how much they're going to make. So that is an option for them. And I mean, it's a smart option. I mean, it really is. It's just a smart option. So what other schools are we talking about here that are looking to join the Big Ten Conference? And like, we're talking like actual, not just rumors, not just people talking. No, there are big name people. There are a lot of buzz. There's a lot of buzz going on about certain schools that are really wanting to join the Big Ten. We already heard before that Oregon and Washington wanted to get into the Big Ten. The Big Ten said, hey, hold up, we're waiting for Notre Dame and all that stuff. However, I guess it's getting closer and closer and closer that Oregon, Cal, Stanford, Miami, Florida State, and Washington all could be joining the Big Ten Conference. You know, and this would put them up to 7 at this moment in time. So they would, of course, want to bring in an 8th team, and what that 8th team would be up for debate. But that would put them close to 24 teams. You know, and recruiting for all these schools would multiply. I mean, it really would. Oregon would benefit immensely by joining the Big Ten, and so would Miami and Florida State. Of course, the other schools on the list would benefit as well, but Miami and Florida State joining the conference would open up their true potential. Same with Oregon. Recruiting would multiply, like we mentioned. They would be able to directly compete against the SEC for their players, and it could have a lasting effects on Florida, who's in the SEC. Players in Florida could stay at home and not have to worry about the competition falling off completely because they didn't choose Florida University. Florida is already a major pipeline to the Big Ten, and the players are very knowledgeable of the teams that play in that conference, like Penn State and Ohio State and others. This is already what we have seen with UCLA and USC, with the Cali pipeline leading directly to the SEC and the Big Ten. So the schools that we have mentioned are in a really good spot to join the Big Ten. Okay, Oregon, Notre Dame, you got Washington, you got Stanford, you got Cal. Those schools are in a great spot to join the Big Ten. But if you're looking at Florida State and Miami, you're looking at, okay, well, they have a much bigger price tag to leave their conference. The ACC has them locked in until 2036, like we mentioned. And, you know, from the reports, it seems like the amount of money to leave the ACC is up in the $500 to $600 million range. That's a lot of money. But at the same point in time, you got to ask yourself and say, well, so we're going to save, let's say we save $500, $600 million right now. We don't make any drastic moves. We don't do anything like that. But what happens when our contract ends in 2036 and they already created these super leagues and we're not in it? I mean, you want to talk about losing money? That $500 to $600 million is going to be nothing compared to the amount of what you're going to lose in the next 20 years. It's just not going to touch that amount of money. You're talking with the Big Ten alone, you're going to make upward to $100 million per year, and probably even more when all those schools come flooding in. So you're going to be looking at, well, in the next 5 years, you could pay that off. 5 years. So instead of waiting until 2036, you could pay that off in 5-6 years, probably even less. I just don't see that as the cost versus risk. I don't see that adding up. I just really don't. It doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, get out of it now. Solidify yourself for the rest of history, because you're in a very good conference that's not going anywhere. And, you spent $500-600 million, but you're going to repay that back easily in the next 6 years, and you're going to have a future, a guaranteed future in football. Because if you don't, and you try to hang on to that 2036 bull crap, and you're like, oh, I can't imagine what the ACC is going to look like in 2036 compared to the Big Ten and the SEC. I can't imagine. I don't think it's going to look good. So if you're looking to add another team too, if you're in the Big Ten, who are you looking to pick up for the 8th team? Let's say you're trying to grab an 8th team for this, which is more than likely going to be the case. Personally, me, I'd go after either Georgia Tech, I'd go after Utah. I'd want Utah for sure. I would not want to give Utah to the SEC, but I would want Georgia Tech as well. So maybe then looking up bringing on another team as well, just to try and get Georgia Tech to make it harder for the SEC to be able to compete. Because in Georgia, like you already know, if you don't go to Georgia, then you're probably not going to go to Georgia Tech if you're really talented. You're probably not, unless you want to stay at home and Georgia just didn't offer you a contract. You're probably going to go either to the Big Ten or the SEC, one of those schools. So you might as well grab up Georgia Tech, make them relevant, and say, hey, you're going to get a lot of eyes on you and blah, 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 and all that stuff. Utah is a big case. I'd really want Utah on because Utah is like that silent sleeper car that's like a Honda, but it's got just a decked out engine, and the potential's there. So there are some questions that we have, and we're just going to talk about things that popped in our heads, which was, okay, would the SEC be able to compete with the Big Ten if all this goes through, which signs are pointing towards it, that this is a high likely future forecast here for the Big Ten. On the football field, would they be able to compete? Yes and no. I mean, of course, the SEC leads on the football field. They have 7 teams in the top 20 if you include Texas and Oklahoma, and the Big Ten has 5, almost 6. So, they're neck and neck in that regard. But if the Big Ten adds those other schools, then no, it's going to be difficult for the SEC to truly have that grip on it because, yeah, you have Bama, you have Georgia, you have LSU, you have Texas, you have Oklahoma, you have Texas A&M. Alabama is Bama because of Nick Saban. If Nick Saban retires, Alabama becomes right there with Georgia and right there with LSU. It's going to be very difficult because Nick Saban is the king. I mean, he's just the king, and he's keeping Bama not even just relevant or not just one of the best. He's keeping them the best. Their transfers, even when they're having bad times in recruiting, they still pick back up really quickly. They're a school you can't count out, and you can't count them out because of Nick Saban. So if Nick Saban ever retires, which he's going to, probably not as far away as you would think, Alabama's going to take a drop down. Are they going to still be a national championship contender? Yes, I believe they will. But you're going to have to compete against, as the SEC, you're going to have to compete against Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, Miami, Michigan State, USC, Michigan, Oregon. The list just starts getting growing and growing and growing for the Big Ten. And the competition in the Big Ten would be insane. I'm not saying the SEC will go anywhere or anything like that, but I think that the Big Ten would have the edge. I mean, those are some big powerhouses that would be joining the Big Ten. It would be massive. And the SEC would likely go after Clemson, North Carolina. But, what's that really going to do for them? Like, Clemson is a popular school, but Clemson by themselves is nowhere near Notre Dame status. And that's just one school that the Big Ten's bringing in, more than likely. One school. You got Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame are all in the, top 5? So you would have 3 schools right there in the top 5, and Penn State's like number 6, number 7. I mean, so financial reasons, the Big Ten would end up more than likely making more money than the SEC. And of course, the SEC would surely not sit by and let the Big Ten Conference own the college football landscape without putting up a massive fight. I mean, they've been the big dogs for a while on the block, and I don't see them sitting there saying, hey, yeah, let's just take a backseat to the Big Ten. I don't see that happening. But there are some other questions, and we're curious to see what you guys think on this as well. And then, we're just talking here about things that could happen. Do you think that the SEC and the Big Ten would become allies and have their teams compete against each other? I think that's a possibility. This seems like a possibility. This seems like that's where they want to go. But at the same point in time, I also see that the SEC and the Big Ten don't care about any other conference but themselves. They don't. Why would you? If you're the head of the SEC or you're the head of the Big Ten, You don't care about those other schools. The SEC proved it when they grabbed Oklahoma and Texas. They didn't care. The Big Ten, Pac-12, Big 12, all of them, the ACC or whatever, they all created this fake alliance thing that the Big Ten was just waiting for their opportunity, because the Big Ten was like, well, we're still bigger than all you guys. Why are we making an alliance with these alliances here that, I mean, the SEC is going to keep growing and we need to compete with them because we make just as much money as the SEC. So the SEC didn't even care about any of these other conferences, and why would they? Let's be honest. Why would they care? I'm not even faulting the SEC here when I'm saying this. Why would they care? I wouldn't care. You want to be the most powerful conference? Well, become the most powerful conference. Grab up everyone you can. And I think the Big Ten did the exact same thing. Said we're gonna have a measuring contest, and that's what's gonna happen here. They went and brought in USC and UCLA. And if they bring in all these other schools and they end up getting a bigger TV deal, and they can go, oh, hey, we're going to go after the SEC directly. I totally see that as a possibility. I totally see the Big Ten sitting there saying, well, we want to reign supreme. And they could go up and try to offer a team like Texas A&M and say, hey, we'll pay you $20 million more if they make that much more, or if they have the ability to make that much more. They could say to Texas A&M, hey, come join us. Come join us, and it just takes one of those schools from the SEC. You can't lose one. If you lost one, then the Big Ten's they have a good shot at being able to swallow up all the teams. And I know it sounds crazy, but that's just my thoughts going on this is going, holy crap. SEC didn't care. I don't think the Big Ten's going to care about the SEC. It's not like they were looking at them going, hey, we're going to make sure you guys are okay. No way. They said, we'll have no problem eating up Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, and all the other big guys. Crap, even Wisconsin, you got Wisconsin, you got Iowa. They're huge in TV ratings. Of course they want them all. So this is getting really interesting. And I think that the Big Ten or the SEC, whoever gets on top, I totally see them trying to be like, hey, we're going to just offer one of these other schools. You try to offer Texas A&M, then maybe take Missouri, take, whatever, or you try to get two of the big dogs. And then from there, the SEC is scrambling, and the Big Ten's just going to get a new TV contract deal. And, of course, their TV contract deal, whoever it is, Fox News or whoever, is not going to care about paying them more money when they're earning more money. They're going to want to be the top TV contract deal. That's what they want, because at the end of the day, the guys who are signing the TV contract deals that are paying these conferences, they want to be top dog too. So these are just some thoughts we have, and it's getting crazy. Obviously, I don't think the SEC is going anywhere anytime soon. I just don't see it. But I do see that these conferences are not looking out for each other, and they are willing to consume the other one. And at the end of the day, money rules. If you can offer one of these schools $20 million more per year, I don't know. What do you guys think?
High ambitions and the right mind can take you so far. It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off from a break off from the weak minds. They can stay soft. You can change lives. You create thoughts. Never waste time. You got one shot. You got one life. Better pop off. What do you like? Make a dream job. No 9-5. No mean boss. Just my life and free thoughts.